Jenny from Tye-Dyed here with another video. I'm going to be showing you guys on how you can tell if your tropical substrate is too wet or too dry or just perfect. So let's get to it. So I guess what we'll do is we'll start with the more moist side and how you can tell if your soil is too wet. So I'm going to show you a couple examples. So this right here is our crested gecko adult tank. This right here is actually too moist. If you look at the false bottom here, you can actually see there's a little bit of water at the bottom. Now usually that's not too terribly bad, except for if we come on in here. So as you can see here, whenever I take the water dish out, you can see how wet this soil is. Like you can just see it's glistening. It's just, if I squeeze it, more than likely water's gonna pour out. Like you don't want your soil like that. That is over moist. That is something that, you still want to spray your tank for humidity, but you don't want to go overboard because otherwise it'll stay too moist. So just make sure if something like this happens, just keep it easy whenever it comes to spraying, and it should correct itself. Plus, whenever it comes to over moisture, plants help a lot because they'll suck up any moisture that's this false bottom here. So, all right, so here's another tank, and it's actually one of our more favorite tanks. This is Slinky, so I'm gonna have to be a little bit more on the cautious side because he's very friendly and likes to give kisses. But his tank is also another example of oversaturation. Now with him and having more of a higher humidity requirement, totally okay, but again, when it comes to soil, it's not very okay. And so if you come down here, you can actually see this false bottom is completely just filled with water. If you look at this right there, you can see that water line, just barely. But this whole thing is just underwater. So this soil in here is completely saturated, and you can actually see, like, it is just, this is something. So another fix to this is not only spraying less, but also doing a substrate change. So what you want to do is, completely take out like all your soil. You're gonna remove the screen from your false bottom, and you're gonna drain whatever water is in the false bottom here. After that, you can put, your screen back on, put in new soil, add about 10% of your old soil back in, and that helps jumpstart that bioactive. We'll be doing that soon. All right, so obviously we've done a couple tanks that have false bottoms. Well, what if you don't have a false bottom? You don't have quite of a bioactive tank, but we still have tropical bedding that is oversaturated. This right here is our vampire crab tank. They are on the bent, they're kind of on the way of being oversaturated. They're not quite oversaturated, but they're getting to that point where it's getting a little too moist for our liking. Obviously they like it more moist. They're a type of crab. So if you ever see your soil, whenever you pull up your bowl and you see just it, like it's just holding moisture, like you can see that it's, that's oversaturated. So at that point, I would highly recommend a substrate change. You can go light on spraying, you can add plants, but it's not going to be as effective as a substrate change. At this point, I would do at least a 50%, if not a full 90% substrate change. So just make sure your soil does not look like this, just clumped and soupy, as you can see. So we already saw our very oversaturated tanks, so now let's look at our tanks that are way too dry and that need some hydration. So let's start with our grass lizard tank right here. As you can see, it does look pretty good on this side right here, but when you come to the water bowl side, it's just looking a little too dry. So if I stick my hand in here, you can see how just loose it is. Now you'd think that is pretty good, but it's just too loose. Like you still want it to, whenever you go to pick it up, it clumps like that. Like you want it to clump a little bit. You don't want it to leak of water. But if I go to pick up this stuff and I go to do that, it just stays really loose. So that right there is too dry. Another example of it being too dry. Look at our Cuban false chameleon. Oh, he's looking at us. He's adorable. Now, even though we have a fogger on him, you can see on the opposite side of the fogger is too dry. Again, just look how loose that is. I go to smash it up and it just becomes it's still just like loose. That right there is not how you want your soil to be. It's too dry, at least especially for this Cuban false chameleon. Again, in the very same tank, you have near perfect, like that. You squeeze it and it still keeps shape. Now it still crumbles, which is fine, but if you squeeze it, it keeps shape instead of, you know, falling like it does if it's. Ugh. So, what do you do whenever your substrate is way too dry? Well, there's a couple things you can do. One, spray more often, spray more thoroughly, just like what Nate is doing here. Oh, the poor guy. So basically what you want to do is you want to spray maybe more often, or you want to spray more thoroughly. Spray exactly where the spots are needed that need to be sprayed. Now, if your spray bottle for some reason is very weak, or it's just so undersaturated or so dry. Oh, he went for a cricket. That's cute. If the soil is so dry that it's just going to take forever for you to spray it, what I recommend is taking some water and dumping it into your soil, and then also mixing it. And so mixing it also adds a little bit of air. So it's not just like creating like a really saturated, really wet area like what we saw in the vampire crab. You'll create more of a balanced moisture in the soil. Alright, so after Nate had sprayed it, and I showed you the same exact area that was very dry for this Cuban false chameleon, right here. Remember how that was super, super loose? Now if I go to grab it, same thing. See how it clumps? That's perfect. Again, you still want to mix it after you spray it or dump water into it, so you still want to mix it. And that right there will help keep evenly moisturize all of your substrate. Now that we know what to look for when it's oversaturated, or how to deal with when it's undersaturated or too dry of a tank, let's go look at some of our tanks that are perfectly moisturized. Again, we've already seen our oversaturated, we've seen our undersaturated. Let's look at the perfect saturation of our tropical bedding. So let's check out Bam Bam here. Now it looks oversaturated, but they did just spray the tank. But as you can see right here, if I go to pick it up, it's not overly moist. It still crumbles in my hand before I squeeze it, but if I go to squeeze it, it keeps its shape, just like that. And it still crumbles after, like it's not gonna just like that, but you know. Basically you still want it to keep shape whenever you squeeze it, but it still crumbles if a little bit of pressure is applied. So that right there is perfectly saturated soil. I've got another example here of a perfectly saturated tank. Charlie here. She's making a nice appearance. Look at that cute little face right there. Aside from Charlie there, let's look at her soil. So her soil is definitely due for a change, but it's still perfectly saturated. So this right here, as you can see, doesn't hold quite as well just because it's old and it has ruptured bark in it. But if I go to really squeeze it, it does hold a little bit. Like there's a little bit of shape there, but it crumbles very easily. Again, not on the dry side. It's still perfectly saturated. It's just old bedding. So it is definitely due for a change. Another reason is, I never really talked about this with the oversaturation or undersaturation, but the color of the soil as well can definitely play a big part. So anything that's oversaturated will be super, super dark. Obviously will leak water and all that. If it's undersaturated, it's going to be very dusty, very dry, and also very like light in color. Whenever it's perfectly saturated, it's still going to look dark, kind of like the oversaturated stuff, but again, it'll crumble. So that's the biggest thing, is you want to make sure that you still have the darkness of oversaturation, but the kind of consistency of under saturation. Alright guys, well that is how you can tell if your tank is under or oversaturated or perfectly saturated. Just leave a comment down below if you're ever having any issues. If you ever need any questions answered, we're more than happy to do so. But until next time, see you guys later. Bye.